Vinnie Sunseri is the new co-defensive coordinator / safeties coach for the Florida Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. As always, I am Brandon Olsen. Happy Monday. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Find me in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl this week, which is why the setup looks different. Might sound a little different because we got a little travel situation going on here. But also, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And like I mentioned at the beginning, Vinnie Sunseri has been hired as the co-defensive coordinator / safeties coach for the Florida Gators for at least the 2025 season. We will talk about the recruiting aspect of things a little bit later. But if you weren't around for the live show, or if you haven't listened to the live show from Saturday, we went live for kind of the instant reaction to the hire of Vinnie Sunseri, which was met with, we'll say a lot of skepticism. That's what we'll say. We'll say skepticism. I know that there's plenty of people who are furious about him getting the co-DC title. I know there's people who are furious about a lot of things, right? And I will say this. I still, and I won't unless I get more information, I still can't look at this hire and just say that I love it or that I hate it. Because to me, he's just such an unknown. We don't know a damn thing about Vinnie Sunseri as an actual coach. Because don't forget, the way that his career track has gone, his resume so far, is GA with Alabama, defensive coaching assistant with the Patriots, running backs coach with the Patriots for 3 years, 1 year as a safety coach, and then 3 weeks as a defensive coordinator, the last 3 weeks as the defensive coordinator of Jacksonville State. So we really don't know anything about Vinnie Sunseri as a coach. And the things that we do know are, hey, Ramondre Stevenson had some of the best years of his career so far with Vinnie Sunseri as running backs coach. Is that really helpful for a safeties coach? I can't get anything that puts a value on it. I've been told a few things about Vinnie Sunseri, that he's very smart, that he's kind of boring to talk to. That's kind of all I got for you. That's it. There's not much other information available, because he's just a complete unknown. That's it. That's why you can say that you hate the hire because he's a complete unknown, and that the Florida Gators shouldn't be hiring complete unknowns because you can get a bigger name. You could say that. I'm not going to say that. That's not how I feel, honestly. Do I think he's underqualified? Absolutely. Like, his resume is easily underqualified. Again, GA at Alabama for a year, defensive coaching assistant with the Patriots for a year, 3 years as the running backs coach for the Patriots. I don't know why it's not singular. For the Patriots. 1 year as a safeties coach at Washington. Like, there's nothing there that's overwhelming, right? Like, I'm whelmed. Okay, I will say that I'm whelmed by the resume. It's nothing special. Even the parts where it's like, yeah, well, again, Patriots running backs were pretty good when he was there. Am I going to credit everything to that? I'm not. You can. I'm not. I prefer to be more cautious about that. But his resume is, I don't care. I know that I forgot who it was, talk about it on Twitter saying, oh, like his resume is better than Austin Armstrong. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not. Austin Armstrong at least had 2 years of defensive play calling duties and responsibilities there. He was in charge of something. He recruited players at a position and then got to actually coach them at that position. We don't get any of that with Vinnie Sunseri. It's a complete unknown. And I will say this as well. When you look at where Vinnie Sunseri's been, what he's done, you know that, well, he played safety under Nick Saban. Again, he's a safeties coach in co-DC. Played safety under Nick Saban. Well, won championships there under Saban. Was drafted as a safety by the New Orleans Saints. Coached under Bill Belichick. Again, defensive assistant for 1 year. Running backs coach for 3 years. You got all that experience. I think that you can look at that and say, well, and this is me just, again, trying to do like the connecting the tea leaves things or reading the tea leaves here. You could assume that Billy Napier probably went to at least Nick Saban and was like, hey, what are your thoughts on Vinnie Sunseri? Again, though, at that point, it's been, 5 years, 6 years since Vinnie Sunseri was with the Alabama Crimson Tide? He's probably a pretty different coach, right? Probably a pretty different coach from the time that he was a GA at Alabama. So really, what can Nick Saban tell you other than like personality? Is he smart? Which obviously he's smart. He played safety at a high level at Alabama and was in the NFL for a little bit and then coach. So obviously he's smart. And then personality. That's it. That's all you got. Like there's not much more that Nick Saban can provide for you probably. And then I've said before, I don't care too much for the co-DC title because I do think that that's strictly something that you need to make happen. Because, and I've said this before, and I know people disagree with it. I don't care. It's strictly entitled for me because, or at least I think the reasoning is that he just took a DC job a couple of weeks ago. And at an FBS program, Conference USA, Group of Five, obviously not the SEC or Power 4 at all, but still, he took a DC job a few weeks ago. And I feel like him taking a DC job a few weeks ago, you can't leave that for a position coach job. Like on your resume, on your Wikipedia, it's going to say Jacksonville State defensive coordinator. Then it's going to say safeties coach. Like you got to put some kind of DC there. You have to include defensive coordinator in the title. And if you argue that, I will bring up the argument, then resume doesn't matter at all, right? And I don't think that resume is everything. I'll say that. I think a lot of it does come down to who you speak to, who you know, and who you can essentially who can vouch for what you know, right? If you go, hey, Nick Saban, what do you think of this guy? That's going to work. Even if you don't know Vinnie Sunseri, if he's interested or if you're interested in him and you go, like, you can make that happen. And so I don't think resume is everything. I think that Vinnie Sunseri doesn't have a great resume, but he played under Nick Saban. He coached under Bill Belichick. Like that's going to boost your value a little bit. And him just accepting a DC job, again, at the Group of Five level, I understand there's going to be people who hate it. I don't care. I think that is why you get the co-DC title there. Just that he took a DC job. You can't leave it for strictly a position coach. So that's what happened there. Nothing insane about it, right? We are about to talk about Vinnie Sunseri's impact as a recruiter next when we get back with Locked On Gators. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Fun stuff. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert that can do everything you need and do your taxes as soon as today. Yeah, an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form for you, or every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all that you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes in 2025. Get an expert now on turbotax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube, and we will remain daily and free, wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube this whole week while I am in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl. Going to be a hell of a trip, I can tell you that much. But when talking about Vinnie Sunseri, we have no idea what he's going to be as a recruiter, right? Like, we've never really seen him recruit. You look at 24/7, and he's credited with one commit with an 89.02 average, and that's it. And really, that's useless. Not having the one recruit, not having the 89.02 average, or 89.02 rating, since it's just one guy. But all of that is completely useless, right? Like, Vinnie Sunseri was at Washington for 1 year. He's been a college coach for 1 year, because when he was a GA at Alabama, GAs especially were not as involved as they're allowed to be now. So 1 year as a college coach. That's it. That's nothing. Because let's say he brought in a 5-star, right? Let's say that Vinnie Sunseri brought in a 5-star safety to Washington. But he didn't. But just hypothetically, walk with me for a second. Let's say he did that. We have no idea what that really says about Vinnie Sunseri. All it says is that you got a 5-star to you. Could mean that Washington outbid everybody for him. Could mean that you've got some kind of pre-established relationship. Could be that you're a really good recruiter, right? However, that could also be a 5-star that's actually getting passed up by a bunch of other programs because the eval is bad. So even if Vinnie Sunseri had gotten a 5-star commit to Washington, we would know nothing about that because we don't know what that eval would look like. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that to diminish anything about Vinnie Sunseri and his recruiting so far. I'm not saying any of that to diminish. I'm just saying this is one of those things where, again, complete unknown. And I understand there's people that are going to say, hey, Vinnie Sunseri should be a good recruiter because he's young. That's not how that works. Being young does not make you a good recruiter, right? You can be young and suck at recruiting. You can be young and just awkward to hold a conversation with. That's not going to help you recruit young kids, right? Like things like that. Just because he's young doesn't mean he's going to be a good recruiter. Hopefully he's going to be. And let's be honest here. Will Harris has a great resume as just a college football coach, right? Like, Will Harris has done a lot throughout his career. I mean, most notably, we will talk about the time that he spent at Washington, right? Because when he was at Washington, when Will Harris was at Washington, they went first round DB, first round DB, first round DB. It was just constant first round DBs. And like I said, when Will Harris got hired, I was like, hey, I'm cautiously optimistic about this. Because while we don't really know what Will Harris is going to do, because again, yes, he was a safeties coach, or he was the secondary coach at Washington, but he was also working under Jimmy Lake, who's a historically highly regarded DB guru developer type. Was it Will Harris doing the development or Jimmy Lake doing the development? And you can go back to this last year when this was happening, when Will Harris got hired. And what did I say? I don't really care, because either Will Harris did the developing, and that's great, or he watched Jimmy Lake do the developing, and that's great as well. And Will Harris also has the resume of being a DC at Georgia Southern. He's got a little bit of NFL experience because before he joined the Florida Gators, he was the assistant DBs coach for the LA Chargers. So you can look at all that and just go, well, resume for Will Harris, pretty good, honestly. Played college football for USC under Pete Carroll. Fantastic DB developer there. So you could look at Will Harris's resume and say, all right, that's really good. You could look at Will Harris's recruiting and say, all right, that's really good. And don't forget, Vinnie Sunseri may be the safeties coach. Will Harris is still the secondary coach. He's not the corners coach. He didn't take a demotion. He's still the secondary coach. This is so that Will Harris, or this so Vinnie Sunseri can learn under Will Harris. We'll talk about that in the next segment, the on-field coaching aspect. But with Will Harris's resume as a coach, and then what he's done as a recruiter, which I do think that for the recruits he's been accredited with, he's been doing a pretty good job of consistently developing them. And with Vinnie Sunseri's, I'm going to say championship pedigree. Okay. And by that, I mean that Vinnie Sunseri will be able to go to every single recruit and say, hey, you know what I've done that a lot of these coaches you're talking about haven't done? I've won national championships as a player. I've won national championships. A lot of people can't say that. So he gets to say that. You know what else he gets to say? I played under Nick Saban. A lot of people don't get to say that they played under a guy that is widely regarded as one of the best DB coaches at least for the past 3 decades. He's right at the top of the list. He's able to say that. He's also able to say, hey, I was on a coaching staff under Bill Belichick, one of the greatest defensive minds. I know I'm talking about a lot of greats. It's not my fault. But Bill Belichick, one of the greatest defensive minds, if not the greatest defensive mind in all of football history. Again, this is what we talked about with Will Harris last year when he got hired, was it doesn't matter if he was actually the one developing these guys, because he gets to say, hey, when I was the DB coach, these guys got drafted in the first round year after year after year. And that's going to help him with recruiting. Vinnie Sunseri gets to say, hey, I played under Nick Saban, winning national championships. I coached under Bill Belichick. I coached under Nick Saban. He gets to say all those things, and he's not lying at all. Was he coaching DBs? No, but he was coaching under them. And that's the selling point that you need there. That should help recruiting. Which, by the way, if they don't get some great safeties, then we can ask questions. I will also say this, reported by, I believe it was 24/7. Vinnie Sunseri reportedly has a great relationship with 2026 4-star safety Bralan Womack. And I believe it was Tom Loy specifically that reported this, but also said that, hey, look for Florida to make a play for Bralan Womack in the coming weeks, because that's someone to watch for. And so we will do that. We will talk about Bralan Womack another time. We are about to talk about Vinnie Sunseri's on-field coaching presence when we get back with Locked On Gators. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. Actually, there's one possibility. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm so sick of it. I mean, yesterday's NFC Championship, first off, it was kind of fun to watch the Commanders get blown out. But also, it's like, oh, like an NFC East team is going to win. As a Giants fan, I'm going to be unhappy with it. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss. Super Bowl gets crazy, okay? Insane. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app's super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you could place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl? Icing on the cake there. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, we're going to talk about the on-field aspect of Vinnie Sunseri. And again, a lot of this is me speculating, right? And I wanted to talk about the on-field stuff despite me saying, hey, we don't know Jack Diddley about his recruiting. I did want to talk about it because I think it's relevant, okay? We have no idea what Vinnie Sunseri can coach. We have no idea, because I need this to be clear. It's really not as simple as I think some fans think it is, and I'm not saying you specifically, but I'm just saying I do think that there's quite a few fans out there of all schools, all teams, and professional as well, where they think that every, we'll say DB coach, because that's the relevant example, where they think every DB coach can teach every technique, and every DB coach can just coach guys where it's like, hey, you're just coaching them to play coverage, right? That's easy. It's not that easy. Some coaches are better at teaching press man technique. Some coaches are better at teaching soft coverage. Like there's other things to it. Some coaches are better at teaching specific zones. There's a bunch of things to it, right? And I'm saying that to say that we have no idea what Vinnie Sunseri can teach. We have no idea what Vinnie Sunseri can coach. And I will say this as well, because I know people kept talking about this on social media, and it's exhausting to read nonsensical conversations and nonsensical arguments. I'm going to be just completely honest with you, where we saw people on Twitter saying, or X, whatever the hell you want to call it, going, hey, they didn't give up big plays at Washington last year, so that means Vinnie Sunseri is good. That's not what that means. We also saw people say, hey, they had one of the better run defenses in the one of the better pass defenses in the Big Ten, so that means they're good. That's also not what that means. First off, they played some horrid offenses, but second, pretty bad run defense that allowed teams to just run the ball against them. That's going to help your passing numbers a little bit. What else was it? What else did we see on Twitter? Oh, my favorite one. I don't care that the safeties at Washington saw their PFF grade drop, okay? And I say that as someone that very much trusts PFF, very much respects PFF, and very much uses PFF consistently, right? I use it for this show. I use it for my New York Giants coverage, okay? I will say this, and I have always said this, and I will always say this unless they make some significant changes. I don't give a damn about the PFF grade. Okay, their stats are helpful. Grades, in the grand scheme of things, long term, sure, are more accurate than not. That doesn't mean they're always right. Okay, and I do think that specifically for me, secondary is where I really question the PFF grades, because so much of that is dependent on what your assignment is. And you just can't really know that. Like, you can watch it and say, hey, I think they're playing cover 3, or I think they're playing cover 2, but you can't really know that. And so I really don't value PFF grades like that, but especially don't value them in the secondary. That just, to me, doesn't hold much weight, if I'm being honest. Okay? So I don't value that at all. I will also say this, because don't forget, Washington went from Kalen DeBoer, who went to Alabama, which Nick Saban ties into all of this, right? Nick Saban retires at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer goes to Alabama. Jed Fish, Florida alum, goes to Washington, hires Vinnie Sunseri, who played football under Nick Saban. And then Vinnie Sunseri now signs with the Florida Gators as their co-DC and safeties coach. And that's why I'm talking about this. But I will say this, all that coaching turnover with Washington, which when Kalen DeBoer left, whole staff changed, right? Which often does with college football. But Kalen DeBoer left. Jed Fish came in. Jed Fish brought in Steve Belichick. Steve Belichick brought in Vinnie Sunseri. Makes sense. They were on the Patriots coaching staff together, obviously, because Steve Belichick was working under his dad, Bill Belichick, as the defensive coordinator there. A whole bunch of stuff, right? Great, cool beans. But that also means that there was a shift in the scheme defensively. There was a shift in how you're coached to play what you've already been playing. Because again, schemes will be different, but everybody's going to play cover 3, right? Every team at some point in every game is going to play cover 3. Even if cover 3 is the call, it doesn't mean you're coached to play it the right way. We've seen at Florida alone, cover 3 be coached different ways by these DCs. Because, don't forget, Florida, Patrick Toney, Austin Armstrong, Ron Roberts has gone through 3 different defensive play callers year after year after year. We've seen them coach different ways. And, Patrick Toney coaches cover 3 close to how Ron Roberts coaches cover 3. But Austin Armstrong coaches it a little bit different, okay? You can see by the way that they're attacked by offenses. So they're coached a little bit different. All that to say that I think the Washington safeties who had their PFF grade dropped, I would think that has more to do with the defensive scheme change under Steve Belichick than it has to do with Vinnie Sunseri coming in. Only because I think it's really tough to say, hey, Vinnie Sunseri came in and all of a sudden these guys got significantly worse in just a few months. That's just like, that's a hard sell for me. I think that the more likely, more logical reasoning or better logic, we'll just say, is that, hey, new scheme came in, they didn't pick it up quick enough. And so in their first year running that scheme, they were a little sloppy. They were a little messy. I think that's more likely than, hey, Vinnie Sunseri came in and every safety got worse. If it was like one guy, maybe, but all the safeties that were significant contributors got worse, and I'm expected to believe, hey, that's just the safeties coach and not the scheme change for a team that last year, by the way, and by this I mean in 2023, was in the college football playoff, was pushing for a national title. I'm supposed to believe those guys all of a sudden got worse, had nothing to do with, hey, they were in coverage longer because the pass rush is worse. It has nothing to do with, hey, there's a scheme change, so things changed and things are different for them now. I'm supposed to believe they just suck now. That's it? Because they all saw double-digit drops? I'm supposed to believe, no, come on. And I'm not saying Vinnie Sunseri is great. I'm not saying he didn't screw anything up. I'm just saying I'm not using, their PFF grades dropped as reasons to say that he's bad. That's just nonsensical. Like, if you don't like the hire, you don't like the hire. But using a reason like that completely diminishes the value of your argument because you seem like you're just arguing just to argue. That's it. My hope is that Vinnie Sunseri is a sponge for Will Harris. Will Harris, I think, is a great secondary coach. I think he's earned the right to be called a great secondary coach right now. And if Vinnie Sunseri, who, by the way, was brought in to help Will Harris, however Will Harris wants safeties coached, that's how Vinnie Sunseri should do the job, right? And if he does that, we'll probably see the whole secondary get better, whole defense get better. And that's what we're looking for, right? That's it. So again, I'm not saying I love the hire. I'm not saying I hate the hire. I have questions, sure. But me thinking, hey, I have a lot of questions about this, it does not equate, hey, this is bad. That's just, I can't go for that logic. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, wherever the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work on New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.